I'm pretty sure that Western elites fell in love with that model, and
They
they're
love it.
salivating at the mouth to try to bring it to the U.S. Here's an example before we move on with your presentation, and I want to get your thoughts on this. It was a couple hours ago. It's from Disclose.tv. Went a little viral on Twitter. Jury rules Infowars Alex Jones must pay more than $900 million in damages to Sandy Hook families. And the reason for that is they're trying to shut him up. They're trying to scare him. They're trying to coerce him because he goes against the narrative. Whatever you feel about Alex Jones, look, the United States, we said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, invaded the country, completely destroyed it. And you don't see any of the leaders that were responsible for that. The New York Times being liable $900 million. And it's what you said, Tone. I could never have imagined this in the United States of America, whose the First Amendment is literally freedom of speech. So, anyways.
Right? No, I couldn't agree more. And that trial was a complete joke.
Mm.
It was a complete and utter joke. But people don't realize, like we do see these videos coming out of China, and we don't know what's the truth and what isn't the truth. But people have to realize that the size of China is smaller than the continental U.S. Like not even counting Canada. Like the continental U.S. is slightly bigger than China, and yet China has the same number of people as America plus 1 billion people. It's hard to comprehend how many people that is. And like that's gonna be the future. It's gonna be China. It's gonna be India. China's birth rate isn't high. India's birth rate is still pretty high. Uh, I mean that will be the future. And if you do compare, India, China plus Russia's military, it it crushes NATO. It
Yeah.
really does. And like you don't want these countries to get together. So what I did was I took a look at this map, and these are all the NATO countries, and plus Japan. So that's the G7 kind of plus NATO. And then this is all of the other economic collaborations between nations. So these are all of the other economic unions. So only China has like a union with Europe. And notice that like Germany and France and Spain, the big European countries that think they still rule the world, uh, they are not part of it. It's only Eastern Europe.
Mm.
And once you combine that with this interesting map, which is which countries voted that Russia did not violate human rights by invading Ukraine. So anyone that's in blue voted that Russia is in violation of human rights. Anyone that's in yellow said they don't want to vote because they don't want to, they still want to keep relations with Russia. And anyone that voted red, all the countries in red, said that Russia did not violate human rights. So obviously, all of the NATO nations, including Turkey, voted with the United States and Europe and Ukraine against Russia. But other countries, including the Republic of Georgia, which Russia invaded in 2008 for similar reasons that they invaded Ukraine, like they didn't want NATO on their border in these countries. Even Georgia voted with Russia, and Kazakhstan, where I just came from, voted with Russia. Now, a lot of the people in these countries are very angry at Russia, and they would not have voted this way. But the country's leadership did. Obviously, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, where I am, they abstained. India abstained. Mexico abstained. Venezuela abstained. Indonesia abstained. And these countries are super important. So when I combined, when I just did just took a look at all the possibilities, and I took a look at what the future looks like which global country will one day soon side with the BRICS, which is Russia, China, India, Brazil, side with the BRICS because the West is collapsing. versus which countries would probably side with North America, mostly from an economic perspective, not a military, not a global war military perspective, but from an economic perspective. And this is the map that I have. So if I mean, dark red is, they're already part of the BRICS. Light red are the countries that would rather, I believe, side with the BRICS than the West. I did put Mexico as siding with the West, because if Mexico suddenly became a military alliance and an economic alliance with Russia, the U.S. military would invade Mexico, pretty much the way Russia invaded Ukraine. The same exact thing would happen to Mexico by the United States if Mexico was to suddenly uh, cooperate with Russia and have Russia send in weapons and military assistance into Mexico. Um, and But here are the countries that, that's basically my list that I was putting together. But on a map, Venezuela, I'm watching Venezuela carefully. Uh, Joe Biden went to the Saudis to try and get oil out of them, and they kind of laughed at him and said no. So now he's begging Venezuela to give oil to the United States so that the United States can sell extra oil to Europe. Either way, Europe's getting screwed. So Venezuela is a key country. I think Turkey and Hungary are key countries. They are members of NATO. They are European. Well, that's European Union. This is both. There is members of NATO, and I think if any country switches and gets out of NATO and potentially leaves the European Union, it would be Hungary. A country that could potentially leave NATO and that is Turkey. They have a pretty good relationship with Russia, and if they have to be forced to choose sides, it would be interesting what they do. And Saudi Arabia and Iran are two very important countries, but they hate each other. So I don't know how they're going to get along in the same union, in the same economic union. But if Putin, let's say, brokers a peace deal between Iran and Saudi, I know people say it's impossible, but Trump brokered a peace deal between Israel and the UAE, where the Israeli national anthem was played at the Abu Dhabi Palace, something that people also thought was impossible. So impossible things can happen. And finally, perhaps the most important country is Indonesia. Indonesia has a higher purchasing power parity GDP than even the UK and Brazil and France. And this country also voted yes. They did not want to vote against Russia. And that is a country that, if they flip and join an economic union with the BRICS, I mean, the West is in trouble economically. All they have is Japan, which is having its issues, Australia, which is still kind of in lockdowns. Europe doesn't have the energy to heat themselves, and the U.S. is in a giant political battle trying to figure out if there was 800 genders or 801. And we all know about Canada. You can't have a bank account if you donated $10 to a trucker. So, like, what is the West clinging to at this point?